Right, right. Now, in terms of this charges, and then we'll move on to something else that has just come up. But in terms of the charges, let me just tell you how I see this, because we had talked about LSU losing or not being able to locate the records from Earl K. Long Hospital, where he was employed in the first couple of years of this agreement. Most of the records have come that have emerged have come from Our Lady of the Lake, where who took over the who took over for Earl K. Long during, I think, the privatization process that Governor Jindal put together. So my thinking is this: number one, I looked at the records, and the records look like they're post-dated because they had the same information. They're neatly typed. And I'm talking about records that have emerged. I'm not talking about all the records. Now some of those records that did emerge that basically have the same informations, very generic information, which is, I forget exactly what it was, but I'll show on the screen in a few seconds what those records said. You saw them. I mean, they weren't particularized at all, and so it really raises a question as to did he make any records that were contemporaneous with the actual events. I certainly would like to see whatever email records he had. I mean, much of the stuff that he had done was by long distance in terms of internet. He's already kind of admitted that, and so he's got to have records that Earl K. Long doesn't have, and assuming they don't have those records. So, we're dealing, he wasn't just working with a private vendor, or he wasn't, privately employed. He was publicly employed, and he was a congressperson. And the good people from LSU said, hey, we're real concerned about this. We're real concerned about what kind of work you're going to do. We're concerned about the record keeping. And he even got an opinion from the House of Representatives ethics, and so there are no records that he's able to produce so far that are in any way contemporaneous with the work that he has performed. And this is where, in my view, it really gets into some uncharted territory, not just ethical, but the question is criminal. Okay, and that is, and think about it. Again, this is public work. Now, if he's got the records, that's great. Okay, that's great. And produce those records now before the elections, or at the very worst, and this would be the very worst, produce them afterwards. But he's on the public dime, right? In terms of his employment with the Congress and also with the state. And he has already been warned, in a sense, as well as everybody, we need to do this right. He gets an opinion from ethics, House ethics, and there's no records contemporaneous. And he can't produce any email records, and he can't produce records that are that verify the work that he did all that time, where he would receive roughly about $50,000 when you tack on the insurances and other expenses. That's a real issue. That's a real issue from a federal standpoint and from a state standpoint. Okay, you're talking about, people from LSU, as I understand, have actually been arrested for payroll fraud. People from the feds, obviously this is a federal, we're talking about doing work using the internet long distance and making records that are documented or supposed to be documented, federal records. Now, I'm not charging him, with breaking any federal or state crime or laws. That's not what I'm doing. What I am saying is, however, is that this is serious. This is more serious, I think, than in terms of prospectively, in terms of what happened with Mary Landrieu. And I'm not in any way, I think what she did was absolutely horrible. Although difference is, I'm not so sure that there's no proof so far that she had any active knowledge about the records, about the flights. She paid the money. I think there should be an investigation as to, did she have any active knowledge, and if she broke any laws. And I do believe that that should, we should look into that. But here, again, we're talking about state law and federal laws. So I have a very uncomfortable feeling about all this, and I hope that that Congressman Cassidy is willing to put forward these documents and not just sweep it under the rug and just say, well, hey, show me your records, or say, hey, this is the last minute. Because if he does that, then I think that people are going to say, hey, what is it that you're trying to hide from us? Now, in terms of Mary Landrieu's case, she said that I don't know, 2002 prior to that, because of the fact that there was no deviation, there was no violation, no ethical violation, because we were able to prorate the expenses from, say, those expenses that would be government-related and campaign-related. So if that was the law at the time, there's no reason I need to show any records. To me, I think she ought to show the records regardless. And why not? So I think this is an area I think that both of them need to really start, coming clean with information, and so I know that that's pretty serious stuff, but I think it needs to get out there.
Well, let me say this: I am not willing to say that either individual, either Senator Landrieu or Congressman Cassidy, have done anything that would rise to a criminal level. In the case of the Travelgate charges that were made against Senator Landrieu, I think, should she have known how it was being charged off? Yeah, I think she probably should have. Probably should have paid a little more attention to that detail. Was it done on purpose? I would hope not. I would hope that somebody on the staff was not doing it on purpose. But that said, it's one of those maybe you didn't know but you should have known type thing. With regard to Congressman Cassidy, again, the controversy seems to be over a lack of records coming out of Earl K. Long. But all that said, you would think, and I think this is what you're saying, is that he's a United States congressman. Whatever records he submitted to Earl K. Long for payment, he should have kept a copy of it. That way, if anybody ever says anything, he can produce the records. And so I think in the case of Congressman Cassidy, it's simply it's an issue of bad record keeping, and unfortunately, it's now risen to the level in the middle of a political campaign that could adversely impact his campaign going into the final week. Until there's something more to show than that, sure. I'm not willing to go a step further other than to say that there's either some sloppy record keeping going on the part of LSU, a failure on his part to keep copies of the records, and in case of Senator Landrieu, I find it hard to believe that she would intentionally tell her staff to charge something off to the Senate, to the public coffers that should have been charged to a political campaign. Because certainly raising money in the United States Senate is not an issue. That's like a water faucet. You wake up in the morning, you go to brush your teeth, you turn the water on, the water runs. That's about how difficult it is to raise money when you're a United States Senator. So I think both sides, if they're guilty of something, they're guilty of maybe being sloppy. but I'm not willing to go any further than that at this point.
Sure, and again, I did not say that either one has broken any laws. What I am saying, however, is that I see a difference in terms of the claims that are being made. And by the way, your camera is not on. I don't know if.
I don't know either. I see my picture on my screen here, and your picture is frozen.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So,
So we'll just have to go with it. Yeah. Again, I'm not saying in any way that there is any violation of any law. I am saying that I do see, in my view, right now, I see that what Congressman Cassidy might have done, okay, is one, if he can't produce any records, and if he is unwilling to produce records and he can't produce any records, then I think that really is, I find disturbing, because you're dealing with a situation where he personally was involved with the record keeping. I doubt that Landrieu would have been involved with record keeping in terms of the travel. It's a possibility, and I think that that questions ought to be raised about that. And again, I think there should be an investigation. But in this particular case, he was a person who was involved in the record keeping, his own calendar, his own records. He signed an agreement, as I understand, that was a state document, okay, that set forth the amount that he would be making, and so on an ongoing basis, it's his own personal records. It's not campaign records, and so from that standpoint, it's also his records, his emails to the students, emails to other faculty. He has this information. He must have this information. Where is it? And it certainly, would be if anything, if he's performing some of his work up there in Washington D.C. as he says that he was doing, then it's going to be on the servers up there. So I'm just saying, I think that look, we're talking about $50,000 per year for about 5 years. He may have performed some of the work. He may perform all the work, but he's in a position where he can produce this information, and I think that both of them ought to produce information, and I think that both of them ought to, I think the scrutiny should be on both of them. But since Cassidy, this is a new thing, and I think that if anything, Landrieu has produced, she has paid $30,000 and plus. Cassidy, at this point in time, is calling it a dirty trick. So there is, he has an opportunity to be able to say, no, it's not a dirty trick, and here is why, because I did the work, and I provided those services. So,
look, Steve, you're right. I mean, we both agree that from a logical standpoint, Congressman Cassidy should have kept all of the records dealing with concerning his dealings with LSU. That way, as I've said before, and you're saying the same thing, if the question ever came up, he's got the records there to show a paper trail, to show what he's done, and to show how he's done it, and what have you, so that there would be no controversy. There is a controversy now because records have been lost, according to LSU. There's no reason to think LSU is hiding anything. They're simply saying the records aren't there. We don't have the records. It's a problem for Congressman Cassidy. That's why I said earlier, he does need to give us an explanation. If he doesn't, he is going to look like he's hiding something. Just as Senator Landrieu handled the Travelgate issue rather forthrightly by doing an investigation in her office and then making the determination that, in fact, there were funds that needed to be reimbursed to the Senate, to her office account, I guess it would technically be. So
Right. And to the public, back to the
that
public.
was good. We don't know a whole lot other than the charges that have been made by the Landrieu campaign and by some of these bloggers. Again, there's no reason to know whether those bloggers, where they're coming from, if they have a certain bent, of what they're doing or not doing. However, that's why it's incumbent on Congressman Cassidy to step up to the plate and say something. And hopefully he's going to do that. If he doesn't, shame on him.
I'm assuming that they did have a certain bent. I mean, I know one is a very liberal blogger. The other one had broken a story when Mitch was running for mayor, and broke a story about John George's sort of like at the last minute. So I have no doubt that that these bloggers had a particular bias or opportunity. No question about that, in my mind at least. But that doesn't, that does not excuse the issue,
Absolutely
and
not.
the
Right.
issue is out there. Questions are being raised, and I just think that personally, because again, I think that let's say in both cases there are criminal issues involved. Okay, whether there was any actual conversion theft, whatever you may want to call it, payroll, whatever it may be, you're taking money from the public, and so I think that there ought to be investigations on both of those issues.